Hi, welcome back to yet another episode of Animation Dissection, the show where, you know what, actually kind of screw this. Zorak made me watch an anime of some repute, and we're going to talk about it. So, Zorak, what did you make me watch?
So I made you watch Nadia, The Secret of Blue Water.
And
Also known
why?
because it is important in the classical sense of it's quite influential. And it was quite popular in its day for a while, I guess.
Way back in
So,
1990, yeah.
basically, Nadia, The Secret of Blue Water is a relatively early anime by the studio known as Gainax. You may know of working on Evangelion, directed by Hideaki Anno, who also went on to direct Evangelion, as well as concept and all that sort of stuff. So the production history for Nadia is kind of weird. It was originally sort of concepted back in the actual mid-1970s by Hayao Miyazaki. And he basically was hired to develop a concept for a television series, and his basic idea was Around the World in 80 Days by Sea, and kind of took a lot of Jules Verne, sort of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea influence, where you have two orphans being pursued by villains who end up teaming up with Captain Nemo and the Nautilus, his futuristic submarine. It was never produced, but Toho retained all the rights to the story outline, and Miyazaki did go on to make a couple series that are sort of based on some of the generic ideas he had, including Future Boy Conan, which was interesting, and Castle in the Sky. So eventually, I believe Toho and NHK teamed up to produce the series, and they got Gainax to do it. When Gainax was kind of having a little bit of a churning around, and they eventually pushed on. They added a bunch of people, took a bunch of people off the project. There was a lot of headaches, and eventually they actually did get on, and they made Nadia, which ended up being kind of a compilation of a lot of different influences, and got a little confusing as a result.
Yes, very within itself, very much. I
Yeah,
don't think I don't think the writer was able to keep himself straight near the end because there's a lot of stuff that
to
stops
be
really making sense after a bit.
Yeah, and a lot of that's also the fact that they ended up writing it a lot as it went, and they lost actually a ton of money on it as well. Basically, Gainax lost, I believe it was 80 million yen on the project, and then didn't actually retain any of the rights at the end of it.
No, because it
So,
was commissioned by the NHK, which is their version of PBS.
yeah, and they didn't get, basically didn't get paid for it, and they got screwed over, and NHK really got them to keep on producing it because it got popular for a while. And then Anno tried being overly creative and doing some things with it, and it kind of went off the rails for a while there. To
Did it ever
really,
get back on the rails? Did it?
I believe it did. I mean, Anno went off to do his finale and ending, and he did end it. It certainly ended. It certainly had a resolution, but that for that little span in there in the middle between where they have the middle ending. Then you have that huge span of filler, and a few things happen, and then it actually ends.
Yeah.
It was weird, but yes, the plot of Nadia is essentially Nadia, titular Nadia, is a young girl of unknown origins, and she meets a young French inventor named Jean, and they end up being pursued in Paris by a group of thieves.
No, I don't know if they're thieves. Well, basically, the great thing about this is if you're
They're
into the
jewel
Pokemon,
thieves.
are they jewel thieves? Because they
They
almost
were
seem like a
stealing a
paramilitary
jewel.
organization, like with the
They're
tank
just
and
very
everything.
hey.
They're Team
Rocket
Rocket,
did it.
okay. So
They are
if you are fans of the Pokemon animated series or grew up with it, these guys are really like the proto version of Team Rocket. Like
Yeah,
they
they're
really
they're the
felt like it.
inspiration. Yeah, they are the definite actual inspiration for Team Rocket, which is interesting. But basically, she ends up pursuit of these thieves because she possesses a strange, mysterious blue jeweled pendant, the blue water, also in the title. And basically, her and Jean end up meeting up with Captain Nemo and the Nautilus, end up getting messed up and intertwined with sort of Atlantis. Well, basically, after the initial story is that there's sea monsters destroying stuff in these pre-industrial. No, this is actually just industrial era,
Yeah,
like 1800s type,
but
late
with kind of a
1800s.
steampunk aspect to it, which
Yeah,
which is kind of weird. Okay, because well, we'll get into it later, but there's a strange tonal disparity that kind of starts going on with it.
Yeah, because it's kind of set up as kind of a steampunk kind of unrealistic kind of technology, kind of steampunk accelerated technology, but then future technology just shows up eventually.
And then renders all the fun, fantastical stuff in it
Really
meaningless.
weird.
And even then, like it, then there's also magic.
Yeah, there's
Like it doesn't.
sci-fi magic.
That's what I mean by all these elements kind of get put in, and they conflict with each other, and they don't really make sense. And it feels like the writers had like we don't know what we're doing at this point. We're just they kind of lost it. Like,
I think it's less losing it and more they say, what else do we got? What else do we want to stick in? And nobody goes, guys, you're making this really weird and inconsistent. They got a little too excited, I think.
yeah. Well, so here's kind of like the basic outline because I'm very recently had to watch all 39 episodes of this thing. So it's so of course it starts off with the two meeting, and of course the young male protagonist is kind of like first sight in love with female protagonist. He rescues her from these kind of thieves trying to take the necklace. They eventually because he's trying to constantly build like flying machines and airplanes and things like that. He's wacky adventure character essentially, and none of his stuff ever works just right, etc. You know, it's supposed to be kind of charming and fun, and it's adventure, and like there's kind of these battles with the thieves, kind of also strange steampunk tank thing, and it seems like it's going to be
Strange. I think you mean awesome.
awesome. Okay, yes, it is awesome, and it seems like at the start it's going to be kind of like a delightful adventure where they just kind of travel to different locations and they kind of constantly run into each other, and it's just kind of a cat and mouse game. And that a lot lasts for maybe about 3 to 4 episodes, and so they get kind of lost at sea. They get rescued by the U.S. military, which tries to fight the sea monsters. The what they think is the sea monster fights back. The kids fall overboard and are saved by a futuristic submarine, the Nautilus, with Captain Nemo and the gang that are what people are mistaking as the sea monsters.
Well, they're one of the people.
One of the people. So, and then, because, oh no, we have all this future tech and no one must know, the kids eventually kind of get left at a random island to then, I guess, find their way home, and they part paths. And this is what starts the first extremely horrifying tonal shift very, very suddenly.
Well, yeah, it's kind of it gets kind of well, obviously Hideaki Anno has a bit of a dark side.
He has
towards
issues.
narratives. He likes some dark narratives, but basically the underlying narrative of the story and why it gets dark is that there's this evil empire, the Neo-Atlanteans, that are trying to take over the world, and we're introduced to them by their horrific act of genocide, which orphans a new character that's introduced. Basically.
Yeah, named Marie, and she is there, and not only are her parents shot, her dog gets shot.
Yeah, they really want to make it super
evil. They shoot
evil.
the family pet as a way of just showing, like, these guys are really bad. And, like, so then these two kids, they're what, 14, 15 years old or something like that in this series?
Like
they seem like they're 12, though. And they now have to take care of this, like, 4-year-old girl and try to, like, pretend that her parents aren't dead for a while. They have to find a way to break the news to them. They also have to do a nice scene where they explain what death is.
See, you can do that and make it work. I think they just simply didn't.
No, they didn't. Not especially after
especially since they never
the series
grow as
had
a
like
result.
Team Rocket kind of adventures. It's like imagine if Pokemon has one of the main characters die and they all have to take turns burying digging up the grave so they could bury Brock or something. Like that's how much of a tonal disparity this thing goes.
Well, see, I think that's fine if it was better written.
Well,
but it's not.
It's okay to have a tonal shift, but in this case, it didn't work. They did not write it in such a way that made it feel organic or good, and so instead you just marvel at how much of a whiplash term this all takes. So
see, I actually didn't mind the abrupt shift at the moment. It's more that none of the actual way that the characters handle it makes much in the way of sense.
No,
because
no,
Nadia and Jean never actually really grow as the result of anything that they go through, and they never actually take away any lessons from anything that happens.
Well, no, see, lessons are constantly tried to be taught to them. They just have to constantly be told these lessons over and over and over again and have them never sink in.
Nadia especially is terrible about that. In that
Nadia especially. She is actually probably one of the least likable protagonists I've
it's
seen in a
interesting
while.
because she is like the prototype or one of the many prototypes for like the kind of concept of the moe character, kind of in the sense that it's
Well, tragic shit happens to her,
yeah,
yes.
she's
But
kind of
she
like
in herself is not interesting or cute in any way.
no, well, she's kind of conceptualized as the the idolized character that the otaku audience like supposed to like lust after, or whatever, which is creepy because she's young, but that's kind of how anime goes.
So
But
back to
but the thing
Genocide
is,
Island.
the
So
thing
let's,
is that the thing though is that she's like that, but she's completely unlikable though.
yeah.
She is just completely, utterly unlikable as a person.
Yeah.
But yeah, Genocide Island.
So they go to Genocide Island, and so Genocide Island was taken over by the Neo-Atlanteans because they have all this super future tech, and they are basically trying to build a giant laser beam that can then commit horrible acts of genocide across the world, which they then hope to take it over. Very kind of Pinky in the Brain style. And the thing is the guy that's in charge of it, he calls himself Gargoyle, wears a creepy mask and hoods. One of the big signs you know you're in a group of really good people is that everybody has to wear masks and hoods, and the guy that leads your organization is standing between two guys that are dressed like the Grim Reaper. This show is not subtle, I think, is the
No.
message I'm trying to send here.
Some to be fair though, that I think this is also another example of one thing you have to keep in mind with anything that Hideaki Anno does is that he always recycles things from other things. He is big on making things that are highly derivative.
Well, he likes references.
He likes he not doesn't make just like references. He likes taking whole elements from other things and just sticking it in whole cloth. Like
In other words, pastiche in a postmodern sense.
well, yeah, that sort of sense. And he basically he likes various narratives. He has things he likes, and he'll just take parts of them and he'll stick them in, take parts of them, and he'll just cram them all in to make a new thing. Like people go on and about how unique Evangelion is. Evangelion is just 4 to 5 different things piled together. You can actually point out and pull out each thing and point exactly to where he pulled it from. There's very little that's actually unique in it, other than in execution, really, and and how well he actually melds these elements together. That's what he does.
So in a sense, it's rather than taking influences and melting them together to make kind of like a new cast iron thing, he kind of glues these pieces together so that way you can see the individual parts that he's glued together.
Well, the thing is, I don't know if you can actually see them in a lot of cases. I mean, with Evangelion, obviously you can't tell because a lot of people just simply don't know that fact. Though that might be also them not being familiar with the stuff that he's referencing. But I mean, with that, he does polish it down to polish off the edges so you can't really tell, but it's not like he's trying to hide it. He's just trying to take things that he likes and just make them into a thing that stands alone by itself. And I think with some of the the goofy evil kind of gargoyle stuff in Nadia, I think that some of that's kind of just 1970s anime type villains. You have your Dr. Hells from Mazinger and that kind of stuff. Where you kind of have a retro feel to their kind of the evil organization, which does fit with the kind of the retro technological feel of the entire series.
Yeah.
And you have even with their death laser, you have it feels like a retro tech type thing, which kind of is thrown away as they move for increasingly more just advanced and just generic super tech.
Well, but then they bring it back again. Like that's the final weapon again. So
yeah,
let's
that's still they
real
make
quick.
it still more super high tech. But anyways, yeah.
So the guy Gargoyle, who apparently had lived in with the Atlanteans as a race, takes an interest in Nadia because she has the blue water, and it's this the gem reacts to various things, and so he basically kidnaps her, holds her hostage. Something he does that Gargoyle kind of does a bunch of times in this series is the way he tends to win his battles is, I have you hostage. Are you going to allow me to hurt your friends? Don't you care about the people that I'm going to shoot and murder if you don't do what I say? And then he throws the guilt on the other party. And somehow, no matter how many times he does this strategy, it just works every single time.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a funny thing with that. But he kidnaps her, tries to kind of to win her over, but in like probably the worst way possible. Like, hey, I'm going to win you over to my side by murdering your friends. So he's terrible at that, and so Jean and teams up with the former baddies who are also kind of kidnapped. And the reason they were originally trying to go after the blue water is they saw a big reward poster essentially to get the blue water. They're basically they're kidnapped as well, and so they kind of break out independently and form kind of a tenuous alliance to kind
Can we
of.
can we pause for a moment and actually just talk about them because there's so
Oh
much more
yeah.
interesting characters than the the protagonist.
Yeah, yeah. So we have the main person that runs it. She is they kind of call her Senorita Grandis a lot. She has like she's basically what is her name? Jessie. She has the big red hair.
Yeah,
She has a lot
she
of
is proto Jesse.
eyeshadow. She is very she's
Her
very coarse but
her
very
entire
tough.
thing is that she's a former member of kind of a royal, rich Italian family, and then her family lost all their money, so her servants are helping her try to get her family back, basically, or get her money back.
Well, she got swindled
Yep.
essentially. It was a marriage scam essentially, and her so the two assistants is one is Hansen and Sanson. No, it's not Samson. No,
So
it's
it
not
is
that.
Samson.
No, but it is Samson because he has super strength essentially. But he's not just like a regular like oh I'm tough. He actually has he's kind of like this
He's the cool
dilettante
guy.
aristocrat playboy who's worried about his suit all the time and is actually kind of one of the more he says some of the most interesting stuff in the series overall.
He is the most likable character. If he was the
He really
protagonist,
is. Yeah.
that'd be
Well,
pretty
he's
cool.
like he's kind of like a Lupin the Third style character. Like
Yeah.
that's what he feels very much like of that type of character. A little bit of a smartass, not super intelligent, but smartass.
And then you have Hansen, who is basically evil Gene. Well, not evil.
Older
he is
version of Jean.
Yeah, he's the
Essentially.
older version of Jean in that he is an inventor and he invented this crazy robo tank that can transform and it rules.
Yeah, and thus kind of renders a lot of Jean superfluous. They both kind of cancel each other out in terms of like having a
I,
point being there.
I think he eventually just becomes Henry Ford,
Yeah, he eventually just becomes Hansen becomes Henry Ford by the end.
which is fun, except less evil, presumably. But anyways,
Yeah. So they form a tenuous relationship as a way of like, okay, we don't like each other. You've been trying to like kidnap and or kill us, but we're gonna team up and they do some like there's really great animation and the plan and all that stuff. It's really delightful and adventurous and despite the horrifying genocide and death and sadness that has just happened, it kind of harkens back a little bit to the kind of joyful early episodes.
see, I think the tonal shift isn't that terrible in that sense because I still think that fits in kind of
Well, it
the
does. This
writing
one
of the
does it
time.
better. Like this,
Yeah.
this adventure stuff. Like okay, it balances the danger, but it's also kind of delightful, and the animation's really interesting.
And then you have the risk because the Neolantians have been established at this point of just being completely just monsters.
Yes. So like, so they have that, and the Nautilus comes just in time to save them, and they're reunited again. And I'm trying to think. I think they stick with the Nautilus
I
with
think at
that.
this point they actually just stick with them, yeah.
Yeah. So they kind of do that. They get integrated to the crew. There's a lot of kind of pointless meandering for quite a while after this point, where characters again are kind of learning about each other. Nadia really hates the captain. She thinks
Nadia
he's
hates everybody.
Yeah, well, Nadia hates everybody, but she really seems to especially hate Nemo, who is. I mean, you see it coming from a mile away.
Yeah.
It's her dad.
Of course.
You can't have an Anno series without dad issues, apparently.
Yeah.
So there's that aspect, and so they eventually they encounter the Neo Atlanteans again, who have reformed and doing a whole new operation that's even more global. And I don't know how no one noticed that they were doing stuff because they must have millions of people working in this organization to have like 40 super submarines that are the size of like downtown like New York or something like that. But beside the point, they're back. They're worse than ever, and now they're going to try to kind of the organization and the Nautilus is going to try to battle the Neo Atlanteans. So they go all the way down to Antarctica, and that's where they discover that the World Tree from Norse myth is real, and it's frozen under the ice of Antarctica.
Well, that's a really minor portion, though.
No, but
But yes,
that's a part of it, and that also apparently the hyper intelligent lizard people were a thing.
that I'm pretty sure is just outright just a Getter Robo reference for no particular reason. They stuck that in.
They meet a sentient mind talking whale who telepathically talks to them.
That just works in real life. That actually is true in real.
Okay, and they also pass through a room that's just penguins
That that
that Nemo is able to kind of just control, and he's like, haha, and they part like the Red Sea
I'm
to
pretty sure
let them
that's
through.
I think that was him going for a Lovecraft at the Mountains of Madness reference.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing that's funny about it is, that, again, they're going through like all these dinosaur bones and like lizard people thing, and they open the door, and it's just a room of walls and penguins, and
Yep.
probably tons and tons of penguin shit just everywhere. I mean, like, I don't know where. There's no other exits, and the door's shut both ways, so they're just penguins sitting there with nowhere else to go. And so, so all this happens. There's a bit of expositing about like that the Atlanteans had kind of destroyed themselves, and they visit one of the old cities underground that everything is kind of blasted away in a quasi nuclear blast, and the ground has like glass beads everywhere because the rock was so hot that it melted them. And apparently some people were able to survive that somehow, because that's the crew of the Nautilus, are the people that used to live in that kind of future world at Atlantis, although they all dressed like they were still peasants from the 1700s in the Middle East for some reason or another. And
It's
then let's see.
cultural.
Yeah, it's cultural. So then, God, I'm trying to think what happens after that point. They then separate again because the Neo Atlanteans attack and proceed to kind of just wreck the Nautilus's shit.
Well, yeah,
The
because they get overcame just by in terms of numbers, and then all
Well,
this gets
because now
thrown.
now they have a floating castle essentially.
Yeah,
They have Laputa at this point.
yeah.
So so then they're separated, and the two protagonists and Marie and the wacky animal character get washed up onto an island, and thus begins the filler arc where the animation quality just completely plummets, and the writer and the characters all seem to completely lose their mind.
Yeah, so there's not 100% complete story about what happened here, but from what I understand, this is kind of loose my understanding of it because I haven't been able to find anything that writes it down. Basically, it was Nadia was doing really well at this point and it was really popular, and so NHK wanted them to keep on making it. Meanwhile, Ano wanted to do an epic conclusion to it, so he needed to go by himself and actually work on the ending. So they got another director and writer to specifically kind of hold down the fort in the meantime, rather than trying to take a break or try to fill up it with repeats. They had to keep producing episodes until Ano had his finale stuff ready, and then have it stick back in. But nothing could actually happen really because the plot had to resolve with Ano's stuff. So what followed was basically 10 or so episodes where nothing happened.
Well, things happen, but none of it has any consequence on anything, and really only serves to make you hate the characters even more.
Well, everything gets just absurd and just makes no sense. Like you were mentioning it to me when you were watching. It's like they all of a sudden they start eating with chopsticks, despite being from Europe, and then just Japanese letters just show up everywhere, and the animation just destroys itself. And there's like weird, slapstick comedy stuff. Like the thing that always sticks out to my mind is that the series has largely been realistic with its comedy and not really super slapsticky.
Oh yeah,
And then all of a sudden,
a character flies into the sun, explodes in a ball of fire, and then falls back to Earth.
yeah, well, the moment I always think about is the time where Jean is trying to call for help, and his body inflates to like 500 times his size, and his head grows huge just so he can shout really loud.
No, his head doesn't. His chest swells up. No, there's one
Yeah,
where he tries to keep. This is the way they arrive on the island. Is they're in the kind of like this airtight capsule of sorts, and water starts leaking in, and his idea is to drink the water, and so his body inflates
yeah,
as he is drinking water, and
that
then
also
he
happens. Yeah,
sneezes, and then yeah. So like everything about it is just completely cartoony, and the tone is just completely all over the place. The character of Nadia, as much of a character as she really is, just completely, I think for a couple episodes, literally goes insane and tries and starts eating spoiled food. She runs off into the forest and kind of tries to become like a Tarzan-like character and grabs
She
giant boulders to smash like cans open and only makes them flat without ever causing them to burst.
she becomes a stereotype of herself, basically, because her
Even
entire
more
thing is
so.
that she's a pacifist and vegetarian and kind of, really stuck in her ways.
She's
And
kind
then
of like a shitty version of Vash the Stampede in that regard.
well, she just doesn't do anything. And she's also just kind of a jerk.
Oh yeah, I mean we'll get
She's
back
super.
into.
She gets super grumpy and she's super inept. But then here she becomes just like a complete stereotype of herself. Like even
Yeah.
worse than normal. Like, and she's already pretty bad.
Yeah, like constantly throughout this entire series, she will throw a complete hissy fit over other people eating animals or killing other people when she literally is almost going to be killed by someone and someone shoots the person who's about to kill her. She's angry at the person who saved her life because she said she would rather die. And so it gets really, really annoying because not only does she kind of learn the lesson over and over again, it's like, hey, don't be such a judgmental asshole, maybe, might be a good thing. And other people have different ways of living. And also, there is no other food. We're about to starve to death. We might have to eat this fish or something because literally there's no like non-poisonous vegetation or mushrooms that don't make us go insane. You're gonna have to deal with it. She's like, no, I will die. And it
It's not
becomes
even like it's not even like, oh, she's sticking up for her convictions.
no,
It's
she's actually
it's
just petty. She's actually doing it for really petty reason.
she's petty and she's just super stubborn in the worst way. It's any wonder that Jean or John or whatever has any affection for her whatsoever because she is so unlikable.
Well, she shows her midriff quite a lot.
Yes,
No matter what
there's that.
situation she's in, her clothing, like she gets like basically it's supposed to be considered like a onesie suit, like a jumpsuit essentially, and she tears off the sleeves and the stomach thing, and she's like, this is much better, and she makes sure her shorts are, shorter than short shorts, like
Yep.
so maybe that's why, because there's nothing in her personality that is redeeming in any interesting way, and it's like all the other female characters are so much more interesting and not horrible like her, and they're constantly having to lecture her and Jean all the time because they are just, well, Jean is less annoying, but he doesn't really have that much to
Well,
him.
he's annoying and nerd and like annoying, and he's just his worst aspect is he's just the most ineffective. Well, we'll get to this.
Yeah.
He is completely ineffectual and pointless. Ugh.
Yeah.
Anyways, but
So
let's
throughout this island arc, she just finds new things to throw complete goddamn conniptions over, and then eventually they get reunited with the Grandis, the three trio. That's really fun. They get reunited, and then they also have a character that showed up for 2 episodes. I think episode 4 or something like that. He's this habitual liar that was a part of the U.S. Navy, who it turns out eventually is a British like count of some sort or related to that, even though he lies all the time and no one else seems to detect that he's not actually American, which would have been a big tip off to a lot of Japan. I guess doesn't know the difference. He shows up again, and he is there because
he's there to be filler.
he was there to be filler, and but they keep him for the rest of the series. He's still there.
Weird.
He's just in the background, just saying dumb things, and so they eventually realize that this island is actually a ship that's just been drifting this entire time, and it turns out it is one of the multiple Noah's Arks, because the Atlanteans are actually a ancient space race from like 5.5 billion years ago.
Yeah, I think they're from 5.5 billion years ago, and they're from like M78.
Something like that. So like 260 some odd light years away from that planet. Something like that.
So yeah, basically they're ancient aliens, and it turns out they created humanity.
Yep.
Dun dun
so
dun.
there were apparently 3 ships. There was one that sank and became Atlantis. One was Red Noah, and one was Blue Noah. Red Noah like lost control, and I guess everybody on it is just never survived or something. You don't really see any dead bodies. It just implied that it's one
I
of the
think
ones
they
that.
were all stuck in their capsules and they never got released or whatever.
Yeah, and I
So
guess
they're all
the
just
same
dead.
thing happened to Blue Noah, which landed in Africa, but then that's where Nadia was originally from.
Yeah, so that's where
But then
Nadia and
she was
Nemo are from.
also the same thing as the royal line that was in the ship that landed in. Okay, this is the part where it stops making sense. Where
Well,
there's the
I don't
part
think
with
I
the
think it's more that they were spread apart, but they had so much technology that it didn't matter.
well, they
They're
did
from
have
they're
they have these tunnels throughout the entire world that connect the continents and oh yeah,
yeah
plate tectonics. That's the world tree.
yeah.
That's the other thing in this one. And characters constantly also tell the future where it's like, yes, we're in space now, but sometime in the 20th century, humanity will find their own way of getting into space. It's like, how do you know that? How do you know it won't be
Computer
the
projection.
21st? It's like, yeah. So I guess yeah. So so apparently not only do the Atlanteans have like future tech, they also have future sight. But so that's I guess besides the point. So they find Red Noah. Nadia kind of finds out the truth about herself, that she's kind of this royalty that has control, one of the few people that's on Earth that has control over it, that she's an alien. She, of course, does not take this news particularly well, and she finds it as a new source of alienation.
Has she ever taken any news well?
No, no, she has
She
not.
has she taken anything well? I mean, it's
No,
she's
everyday stimuli is a little bit too much for her. And so she finds out the truth. They get reunited yet again, but then get drawn into this conflict where they arrive in Africa, where they land in this kind of tribe where I mean I don't know whether or not I want to call it racist or not, but it's not a good portrayal of African tribes by any means
no.
because it's really dumb and just oh my god, and it's supposed to kind of resolve the Grandis arc because they encounter this kind of French imperialist, a hole down there that was the person that scammed her. And the resolution, I guess, is supposed to wrap her up, but it doesn't really, and she still remains being very interesting up until the very end. Um, and let's see. Then after that, they find the blue Noah, which is the one where Nadia was apparently originally from. So they go further down to Africa, and then it turns out the Neo Atlanteans were waiting for them and tracking them this whole entire time. And then they reunite with who they thought was dead, the crew from the Nautilus, who are now in a spaceship.
Space battleship.
A space battleship. Yamato. I mean,
It's literally just like a spaceship from Gunbuster, I think.
pretty much, and that's underneath. That's underneath there. So they've been there this entire time, I guess.
They were getting it ready, I think, like fueling it up and getting it, all set up
Yep.
was the idea. But then Nadia basically gets kidnapped to outer space.
Yeah. Well, and again, it's that same scenario where I'm going to murder everybody if you don't do what I say. It's going to be your fault.
It's like, okay, I'll go with you so you don't murder everybody. And then they get her like, okay,
We're now it's
going
time
to use
go
her to
murder
murder everybody.
Yeah, like
It's
she
like,
doesn't
oh, why
seem-
you?
like as if she didn't. And the thing is, his characters point that out constantly. Like, no, he's just going to do it anyway. He still needs you, so it's like
It's
you
like
don't
he's
shoot
not
the
going to kill
hostage.
you. He needs you. You're not even a hostage. He needs you.
Yeah.
And basically then we discover that she has a brother who was killed or something.
Well, and then his
Now he's a
his-
robot?
yeah, now Marge is a robot.
Yeah, so he was reconstructed with like nanomachines because he's basically enslaved to gargoyle
And now he looks Egyptian
Yes.
because that was totally a motif that was around. It wasn't a motif that was around. It's just suddenly there for no reason.
Yeah, I don't know.
So that's the thing, and so apparently she doesn't have control over the blue water anymore because that combines with Nemo's blue water in this final confrontation, and Robot Child is able to control it. Again, this is where it starts getting magical. It's like, oh, you have to have Atlantean lineage, and that will have your will.
It gets kind of
your
the
will
sci-fi.
gets transferred over. It's like this isn't even future technology anymore. This is just magic. Okay,
Well, it's
so magic happens.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Again, like they're doing this whole thing of like, oh, it's scientific, and they try to use all these scientific terms, and it's the idea of technology and steampunk and all this other fun stuff, and then it's just nope, magic.
Well, it's a sci-fi tech stuff. It's like how well, it's the whole thing that they just say in general with sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable
It operates
from
like magic, yes.
Yeah.
So
But
that
then
all
again,
happens. It turns out that Gargoyle, the guy that wants to kind of create this new world order where the Atlanteans, which he considers himself a part of because, well, he lived in Atlantis, should be the rightful rulers of humanity. And again, because the Atlanteans created humanity, he wants to express dominion over them. Lo and behold, it turns out that the only Atlanteans alive are Nemo, Nadia, and, well, I guess kind of robot brother.
Even though he is technically now a robot.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it turns out
that everybody, all the other Atlanteans were, in fact, killed off or diluted into the population enough that no one cares anymore.
Yeah, there's no real
he gets turned into a pillar of salt. Biblical reference.
Yeah.
And John fulfills his protagonist duties by falling from a platform, cracking his neck and dying, and then she uses the blue water to revive him, but in doing so, it loses all its powers, and
because the blue water was like full of like Atlantean ghosts.
Yes, actually, it is.
It's full of Atlantean spirits, and then it's
which
kind of like
fix a loss of blood and a broken neck.
Yes, well, it's kind of like, okay, you can use up all the ghost power in here to make him not be dead, but that's it.
But you won't be able to control the technology with the blue water anymore.
All Atlantean technology will be gone.
And she's like, and you won't
be
able
to have
this
power
anymore. And she's like, well, the thing is like throughout the series is like, I hate this power. I'm just this awful, terrible person who happened to get this power. She literally does say that at one point, that she's an awful person and that she just happened to inherit the power. And when she does so, that I end up not having anything counter to say to that. Like, no, you're good at trapeze.
She is good at things that aren't really relevant.
Not really relevant or ever really put to good use. And so she revives Jean. They all escape.
She revives Jean after finally realizing that it's like, oh, I kind of actually do like this guy, I guess.
Yep. Nemo dies heroically after. Also, though, he impregnates Electra, the blonde girl that follows him all the time.
His surrogate daughter figure, which is also kind of a little bit weird, but she was at least older when he adopted her, I guess.
Well, yeah, she was like like late teens or something. Because she's
so
in her
it's
20s
a little
in the
less
series.
creepy, but still.
Yeah, it's still fucked up and weird. Everything in the series is kind of fucked up and weird near the end, anyway. And so they escape after he sacrifices himself nobly to propel them from space because everything's damaged so badly.
Because he's a space captain and a dad, and that is his role in anime.
And the series kind of like officially ends before this epilogue with the little girl and a nurse figure that kind of shows up in the background once or twice, going like, "Oh, things will be great when they come back, and I hope this never happens again." Goes to black. Then there's epilogue with grown-up originally 5-year-old Marie. She's in her like 20s now, pregnant with Sanson's kid.
Which is weird because he's like 23 years older than her.
Yeah, and he knew her when she was 5. Like that's how they met.
Well, yeah, that is weird.
Most
of
the characters
that does kind of fit for the
era.
Yeah,
I mean, Grandis actually she remains single, but she enjoys being single. And Hansen becomes basically Henry Ford.
Yeah.
And Jean and Nadia have a child, and that's kind of it.
And Nadia's finally chilled the fuck out.
I guess.
That's basically it.
Maybe. I don't know. Like, you never actually get to really see them
well,
from their own mouth.
You see them actually eating meat without her freaking out, even though she's a vegetarian.
Although she's still eating, like, vegetables and shit.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
no.
she's not throwing a fucking shit fit every 5 seconds. That's something, I guess.
So there is that. And so that's how the overall plot of the series ends. I mean, yes, there are twists and turns and attempted forms of character development, but at least for the two protagonists, none of it really kind of sticks. Here's the thing: is the Jean and Nadia really feel kind of like a cipher for the other more interesting characters to talk to or talk at.
To be
interesting, because otherwise, they have to tell someone so that way we can find out what they're thinking and their background and what's going to happen. Because otherwise, they really have no agency in anything that goes
Well,
on.
especially
Especially
Jean.
Jean. And like again, he starts off as being like you think because he's actually he walks around the World Fair and he's able to point out all the flaws and he's very very advanced and a lot of this stuff like you think that somehow his personality or his
His
knowledge
kid
or
smarts and inventiveness will
yes
allow him to do
is
something.
going to allow him to maybe come up with a solution. So like even though he's not the one operating the bridge of the Nautilus, he might somehow come up with an idea. Nope, it's all Nemo. Nemo ends up being like the most interesting badass character who comes up with good, good ideas and solutions and shit.
Well, because they go away from like they start with the steampunk kind of aesthetic, or the turn of century industrial stuff, but then everything immediately gets super high tech around them, and it's like
It's immediately
he
outclassed.
has nothing he can
Yeah.
contribute to it. He even when he's on the ship, he never does anything inventive or interesting, which is funny because Hansen and the Grandest guys are still always relevant with their stupid, amazing tank.
Yeah.
Even at the
apparently.
very end, the tank is still doing amazing shit. You're like, that fucking tank from
Jean
the first
helps
episode.
them build it, but that's not really all that important. Because again, the most
it's not his
important
thing.
stuff is all Nemo's doing.
Yeah, Nemo is essentially the protagonist, but he can't be the protagonist because he's an old dad.
Yeah.
You can't have an old dad.
Well, it also
captain as a
didn't start
protagonist.
off with him as the protagonist,
Yeah.
and he's not the one that apparently everyone's after for the Blue Water, even though he's the.
Because they all think he's dead,
I guess.
even though he
constantly.
has his own blue water or whatever.
Yeah, the whole thing. It's dumb. I mean, so that aside, there are some very Ava-esque things.
Well, there's it was a big inspiration for a
especially
lot
in the
of
last
stuff.
two episodes where okay so you have you know how like in Ava they had that escalator that just went on forever. There's that is literally in this. Most of the female characters are pretty much wearing plug suits. They have apparently when Atlanteans were creating humans, their first version of them were like 100 feet tall and didn't work very well, so instead they decided to genetically manipulate apes or something like that to create
And
the
combine
missing
it
link.
with their prototype ones, basically.
Yeah, so they have this body of a 100-foot tall, proto-human, which just looks like a regular human. It's just huge, and it's lying in repose, much like the Ava graveyard in Evangelion.
Well, it's also kind of the concept of the Avas and the angels in Evangelion. With,
yeah,
like
with
Lilith
Adam and Lilith and all
the
that.
whole entire, and that's also another sci-fi novel that he borrowed from like the 70s and like the 60s, basically the whole concepting behind that. And that's really, again, there's a lot of stuff like Ava derives from Nadia, but then in Nadia in turn and Ava both derive stuff from sci-fi novels that he happened to have read and liked or read about on Wikipedia, I guess.
Yeah. And also there's a lot of visual motifs. A lot of the battle scenes in the Nautilus, which I think the most effective thing is that he's very good at doing this kind of sense of dread. They're when you're in a submarine, of course, these are not high, they're not able to suddenly change direction and, walk on land. It's very slow, but they're able to kind of get that sense of tension. You can't see everything else around you perfectly. You're dealing with sonar, you have depth charges and things like that. And he uses that plinking piano noise that you end up hearing it a lot later on in Ava. He used that very effectively when characters are waiting to see the results of their plans.
It has a lot of the sort of Ava sort of action where even though you don't have like the robot type stuff, it has that.
Oh, it has the
feel.
the doors shutting, the series of doors that shut and then lock in the Nautilus is pretty much picture like just Ava. I think just recycles essentially that animation. A lot of the interface design. I mean, I kind of wonder if Anno is one of those kind of what is it, the autistic people that are really into trains or something like that. I'm kind of wondering because he's really into the mechanics of how everything works. He likes designing and doing really advanced sequences of all the stuff coming together and doors
I just
shutting.
I think he thinks that's cool because Gunbuster also had a ton of that as well, where you just have all the stuff connecting and
there's a lot of that.
real.
A lot of it
looks,
is
and it
in
looks
that.
really cool and neat. I'll give you that. And like the action scenes in general for this tend to be pretty interesting and fun.
He's very good at that. He knows how to choreograph that type of stuff. He's good at doing the sense of dread in the middle of a battle from the strategic standpoint and, the back and forth between that. He's very good at that. He just really, in this one in particular, he just struggled so much, I think, to balance a lot of the elements they kept from the Miyazaki side, which I think was meant to, yes, it can have dark elements, but I think it was meant to be a bit more adventurous and kind of fun,
Hmm.
especially just tone wise, and just the fact that the main characters being who they are, it seemed like it, and I don't think they were initially intending it to be, um, future tech. I think they were going to probably try to do they probably, I bet in the original, looking at the Miyazaki thing, I'm betting that Nemo's thing was going to be advanced, but not like this advanced, not like Star Trek level advanced.
Yeah, it gets like crazy. Well, even at the end, we were talking about like where they're literally just using alien ghost technology. Like
Yeah,
it gets that advanced at the end. And it's like we start off with like paper mache robot arms.
yeah, and it's like that's stuff that's kind of fun and actually really unique for what was, at least at
Oh
the
yeah,
time. These days, steampunk is very passe, but at the time it was very delightful. I mean, it echoed a lot of Miyazaki's other TV series he did, Sherlock Hound, where there was a lot of that type of kind of cobbled together tech that made it kind of very fun and adventurous and just kind of, again, very joyful. I mean, that series was a little bit more comedic, but I felt there was a similar look to it that was kind of going on, that was kind of attempted at the start of the series, and then they just kind of just they just swiped the toys off the desk entirely and just went, nope, it's just going to be sci-fi.
I wonder
That's
how
it.
much of that. I wonder how much of that though was their accelerated scheduling, where they just
Well,
where
the
Anno
funny
had
thing
this
is
idea, but
like
he
from
didn't.
the start, when I looked at like the episode titles, even in the first couple episodes, they already were putting in parentheses the 39 part series. Like so they were so like they didn't extend it
Well, I know
beyond.
but it sounds like there's something about the concepting phase. Like, I wonder how much they may have had 39 episodes scheduled out, but I mean, even
They didn't
that
know what was going to happen in them, I don't think.
they were sticking things in. I wonder if how behind schedule they are because I mean, obviously they end up with money, and I know Ano actually tried bailing from the series several times.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Ano is
everybody
also
tried
not well
bailing.
known for being a mentally stable person
Well,
either.
I mean, multiple people bailed. People got kicked off the project early on. Ano got stuck with it at the end, essentially, which is
Yeah.
why Ano just basically stuck in like a lot of references because that's kind of his type of thing. But
Yeah. He can't help himself.
yeah, but it was a really mess to make, and I wonder how much of it is the production driving the issues.
I
And so,
guess.
I mean, it's hard to tell how much of it is as designed or as intended, and how much of it is just
As a
the horrible
result of just the
problems.
environment around it which it was created. Yes, I mean
Yeah,
that's always an important question in this kind of case.
I
And
mean, it's hard. It's not like you can
I'm
excuse it as a result, but
yeah, I mean I'm not quite sure what to blame. I'm just kind of calling it as I see it, in that it
yeah,
just it feels like it started off as one type of show, and much like a shonen manga, when they show up in Shonen Jump or something like that. They'll start off being like one type of story, and then maybe 5 episodes in, it doesn't do well in the ratings, and so the editor just goes, "Turn it into a battle manga. I don't care how you do it, just do it." Suddenly the characters and everything else just takes an entire turn.
yeah.
That's what it feels like with the series. Is that it was going to be something, and then it just completely goes in another direction, and that causes a lot of the conflict in tone and style and everything else. So that kind of steampunk cobbled together technology thing, and Jean's supposed role in the entire thing, I think it just turned entirely because they wanted to kind of, they didn't know where they wanted to go with it from the start.
Well, yeah,
That's what it feels like.
because like even in the epic finale where they're launching their spaceship to go out in space and take down basically the Death Star,
Yeah.
they're basically going out to do that. John didn't do fucking shit. All he does is comes around along for the ride as everybody else is doing everything, and then he gets into the final room and then falls down dead. That's all he does. That is his
Well, he's
entire
used as kind of a
contribution.
hostage. It's like, can I be the protagonist now? Like, no, I'm sorry, you're just cannon fodder.
Yeah, you don't get to do anything, John. You're not smart or interesting enough, which he isn't. But like, he doesn't get to do fucking anything.
No,
Even when he does,
and
even
the
when he
funny
tries
thing,
doing his inventive stuff early on, it's basically they all go.
John, you suck. Yeah, that's in the show.
It's like
They're
a nice
constant
toy
that.
for
Yeah,
babbies. Check
yeah.
out this laser beam.
Everything you do, it's like, thank you for showing me the pointlessness of human endeavor. Like that seems to be kind of the message with Jean. It's like,
He is a
well,
terrible
whatever you do,
protagonist.
someone will come in from space with something that's way better and will completely outclass whatever you do. There's nothing you can do.
Yeah,
Everything is pointless. Kill yourself. Kill yourself. Kill yourself, Jean. Like that seems to
Yeah.
be like the message of this
But
series.
then you also have Nadia as the other main protagonist, and just like, oh God, Nadia, why? Why are you even a character here? You are just so fucking unlikable.
Yeah,
Like if they, I mean, John at least had enthusiasm and he tried. He
yeah.
failed all the time, but he tried, I guess.
He kind of learns things over time and tries to be more attentive to things that people tell him, and he accepts the criticism and kind of grows a little bit as a person, but not
But
enough because the series doesn't make
well,
use
even
of
his
him.
flaws
Well, it
aren't
doesn't make use
huge.
of the lessons he learns. So like normally in a story where a character starts off flawed and maybe like learns the lessons and learns a skill, that learning process and the skills they learn become important. That character growth has an effect on the plot, and because the character has agency on the plot. Jean he's all these characters lecture him, they teach him lessons, and he seems to it seems to soak in somewhat, but that doesn't actually, just because he learned those lessons never become applicable.
Yeah, because
So
I mean,
because he's never given the chance to apply anything, because everything that happens around him is so outclassed, like technologically, by age, by subject, by
well,
just immediate physicality. There's nothing for him to do.
well, his big flaw from the moment one basically is just his lack of experience. That's his overlying flaw. He doesn't have any major character flaws, as far as I can recall, beyond just
Being like a 14-year-old boy.
being a 14-year-old boy. He doesn't have a lot of experience in the world and interacting with other people.
Yeah.
Nadia, meanwhile, has all these character flaws, and both of them never actually really overcome them at all.
Not
I mean,
not in any big noticeable way. Nadia
no.
especially, because she will learn her lesson, then unlearn it, and then learn it again, and then it's almost like she intentionally unlearns it just to piss everybody off. Like at that point, and
I wonder how
it's
much of
just
that
so
is
frustrating.
I wonder how much of that is them trying to do some sort of like narrative writing, where they wanted to have her big turnaround moments be later on.
But they never actually came.
Well, I think it's more like they tried to have it be like wanted to be a big moment, so they kept on kicking it down the road. But then they never actually found a good time to have it happen. So you have all these little bumps of her trying to learn a lesson, and it just never goes anywhere, and it's completely pointless and obnoxious.
And even then, like the final big character moment, supposedly, essentially, is just, "Hey Nadia, do you want to use this power to save this person? Also, it's a power you didn't want and is possibly destructive."
And I
Okay,
guess you probably
so
like
they
this
give
guy.
her like a really easy choice, essentially, and she makes that choice, and that is what the series declares as, "Oh, she did it. She's a better person now. Narrative done. Like we
But it's
we,
like,
we
but even a
accomplished
really
it, guys.
big
Character
thing.
growth accomplished." But again, that's what the series seems to be attempting to do. But having watched 39 episodes and all these other characters and everything else that happens, like that is just shit. You had 39 episodes to do this character arc of growing a character and having that growth have agency on the plot and have that character turn have really big impact by having them overcoming something that is very difficult and making a tough choice. No, we're just going to have her do a very easy choice that any character would have chosen. Like
Yeah.
almost, I mean, apart from the villain, all the other characters in the story would have made that same choice. It's not a difficult choice. It's not something special to her
Well, I don't know.
in
Would
her
Nemo have made
view of
that
the
choice
world.
though?
Hmm.
Because they are. I mean, the gem is his people's.
Well, he was already
Dead
dying,
people's.
and
Yeah,
he
well,
also nods to her like, "Yeah, go for it."
and it's like, yeah, well, yeah, it's like,
And
you
the
got,
only reason he was trying to stop the guys because he doesn't want the destructive power, and he was like, "I want everything to go back to humanity." Like
well, that's true. It's kind of like,
so.
yeah, we
So
had
he
our
would have made a
chance.
similar choice where he's like, "Oh yeah, I don't need we don't need this power anymore."
Yeah,
Like so, he probably would have made a similar choice if not
probably.
the same. Like it's not a difficult. So again, even though she's the one supposedly making this big choice in the end, it really isn't, because it's such an easy choice with very little consequence to her. There's no will she, won't she at all, and
Yeah.
that robs that moment of all the gravitas that it tries to be building around it. And again, like just and even though they shove Jean's purpose aside, the series still spends so much screen time and episode time with him and Nadia, despite the fact that they have nothing to do with anything in the plot. It's kind of like, imagine Ava, for example, where imagine if the main characters and the story was the classmates who don't get to drive the Avas. Like, imagine if that was it. Like, that was
Yeah,
supposedly the main
really. Yeah,
characters of
yeah,
this
kind of.
thing, and then the series pretends that they have some kind of impact on the final. They don't. The series likes to bring them along for the ride and pretend they do. Again, the primary difference is that the young characters, despite their inexperience in Ava, have the ability to have agency on the plot.
Because they have the
Therefore, you
robots
actually
as the
yeah. And so,
means of.
despite their inexperience, despite the fact that they're freaking teenagers, you start caring about the fact that these characters feel the way they do, even if they don't, even if they're irrational, even if some of the characters are annoying, because you see that those aspects of their personality expressed in how things are going to work out, or whether or not they're going to work out in the fights and in the greater scheme of things. The interpersonal things become important for the greater scale of the project. You know, that's the difference with Ava, and why that is very effective, and why a lot of series are able to do that, where the personal becomes kind of like the public in a, you know, in the sense that, like, you know, the world will end if these people don't figure out their shit, you know?
Yeah, yeah. An interesting comparison I always find to Nadia is the more recent series of Eureka 7, in that it has
Mm,
basically a lot of the same sort of character placement in it, and like sort of like a sort of general plot arcs in certain aspects, where it has kind of the same thing of you have a young male protagonist who joins with, ends up involved on ship because the female protagonist that's mysterious and has some sort of past. And then it has kind of the same sort of thing, but it has the protagonist have so much more agency in it, and all the character growth makes more sense, that it works where Nadia completely fails.
yeah. Well, and I think also something that we kind of addressed a little bit earlier were these types of tonal shifts,
Yeah.
where the series tried to be different things. And again, like, I think it's possible, and I think it's very good for a series to have a variety of feelings and emotions, and maybe, you know, have a sense of comedy at one point. But again, the problem with this one is it doesn't know how to change those tones in a way that doesn't undermine what preceded it. You know, and that this is something I see in a lot of web comics, and it kind of became kind of a trend in these, like, it's a comedy slice of life, you know, high school thing, and suddenly all these characters are dead and it's the future, and this main character got turned into a half dragon and something like, and the first like 2 years of the series is just gag comics at a high school, you know, like, where it's this sudden change and it's like, what the fuck just happened? You
Well,
know,
yeah. With this one, it's the example you mentioned to me, like when you were watching it, was like, okay, we just had a character die last episode, and it was really tragic, and here it
and
was
there's a
his
giant
funeral.
funeral,
And
and then
the beginning
suddenly,
of the very next episode, we're on just light gag comedy again. It's like, what?
yeah, and then,
You,
I
you
mean,
got you got to
also,
transition into this stuff slowly. You have to slowly move back. Like, oh, we have to move on with life, that type of thing. You don't just immediately go into womp womp. Oh, someone fell on their face again. Wah wah.
yeah, or like, oh, everybody that we have been with might possibly be dead, and this organization that wants to exterminate humanity has a flying death castle. Now let's go
Oh
to an
no, we
island and build a mechanical version of a male lion cub that's the comic relief character that will race another one, and then also
and then we're gonna accidentally eat magic mushrooms so we can have a trip out episode.
oh, well, no, it's not a whole episode, but yeah, one
Well,
section
what I
John
mean.
actually does eat like poisonous or psychedelic mushrooms. Um, it's really weird. Is I don't know if you ever played Mother 3, but there's like odd elements in Mother 3 that like feel like references, where you have a robot brother.
Yeah.
That's a big thing in Mother 3. There is actually a psychedelic mushroom aspect when they get washed up on an island, but that one, by difference, is able to balance the lightheartedness and actually use that high contrast of kind of lightheartedness and humor to make the drama stuff actually feel more heartrending, because now you have a contrast. See,
Yeah.
that's how you. So Mother 3, as a video, even though it's a video game, I feel is able to do that emotional balance between lightheartedness and dark in a way that kind of grows the two. In
Hmm.
by using that contrast, it uses it well. This one, it's in such a way, again, that it undercuts the mood and the emotion behind it, and that just doesn't work. And again, and then it also, I'm also more suspicious of it, just because, again, the style of the series and the setup and what feels like the narrative structure changes constantly, and I don't trust them. It feels like they don't know what they're doing, and therefore these comedic shifts don't feel intentional. So when I'm not trusting in the guiding hand of the author, I'm much more likely to view a tonal shift as being just incompetence or something like Bleach or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Overall, I think it was it's an interesting series, and it certainly had a lot of influences.
it has some
It
interesting
influenced a
visual
lot of
stuff.
things.
Like there are moments of it that have very good animation, and they were also very limited by cell technology back then. Like you
Right.
definitely see the way the camera is shot. There's acetate that gets caught in the film camera that you'll sometimes see. Like it's you very much see it's a product of its era, but there are moments of it that are extremely well animated. Mostly the mechanical movements and but then unfortunately the visuals being a big part of what made it so kind of interesting and bearable it completely and utterly tanks in the island arc. There's literally a scene I think that's like I think it was like 35 seconds of characters talking over a reused cycle of 5 frames of animation from like an earlier episode in the island arc,
Yeah.
and they talk over it for 35 seconds, and it gets extremely bad. Like it I can't even describe. I mean, it's all. I ended up watching those. I mean, I know you advised me to kind of skip them because yes, nothing that happens there matters. But in a train wreck sense, and as an animator, it's just oh my god, I have not
Yeah.
seen something that bad on TV in a long time. Like
I mean,
that.
if anybody listening to this wants to just watch it just because you're curious about the influences it's had and don't want to actually just watch any of the terrible episodes, I think the recommended like things is like you watch like the first 23 episodes, then you
Something
watch
like that, yeah.
then you watch
The final 6.
you watch 30 and 31 because the
Oh
Red
right,
Noah
the
stuff,
Red Noah.
and then you go to 35 to the end.
Yeah.
So you end up skipping like
So you have to
half
actually
the show
wade,
or something.
Yeah, you have to wade through the sewage to get the one episode that actually is kind of relevant and tries to
And then you skip it past it
underail
again.
the whole thing. Then you have to skip it through racist Africa arc.
Yeah, it's like don't
and
care
then-
about Africa. Just finally they're at Blue Noah, and then it
yeah,
matters.
and
again.
then everything else. Then again, and then the animation suddenly comes back. Like the characters jump out of the cool tank thing, and the animation looks great again. It's like
Yes,
God
it's like
damn.
the money
back.
showed up again. I wonder how much budget they actually had for those filler ones. Like if it was like a shoestring thing or what.
I don't know. I mean, and I'm more wondering about like what the writing. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in that writing process because it feels like the characters literally lose their minds, and it feels like the writer did.
Well, yeah, 'cause
like
I
it
think
really
he had to
does.
be making it up like on the spot for some of the stuff because he's like, oh god, we have to think of something to do, but we can't actually have things happen. Oh god, what sort of filler things can we do with these characters? And they just like scrambling for papers, like trying to take as many broad stereotypical comedy things that they can write into an episode as quick as possible, and then just animate it as quick as possible, and it just is just
But
crap.
here's the funny thing: is it does this whole like around the world in 80 days thing as a big influence. They could have easily just done filler of them being in Pokemon style Town of the Week or whatever.
Yeah, they
could
could
have
have
easily done
some
something like
sort of
that, which would not
adventure
have been
thing.
as horrible. Like there was such a yes.
They
like,
they could even tied it into the ongoing storyline if they wanted to, and just have it tied into them trying on their own to try to
get
stop
to Africa or something.
or to trying to stop the Neo-Atlanteans, even though the Nautilus is gone, trying on themselves to do something or make some
or
difference.
just do adventures of them trying to get back to Africa because that's where they have to get to Africa to get the show to come back to in order again, essentially. And they could have just had them go from village to village and
Yeah, we did kind of go past it a little bit. There were episodes early on that were just completely pointless in the overall plot line. That were
there were plenty.
Like the one
but
you
they were
mentioned
still
to me was
not. They were still not horrid though. That's the
well,
difference.
yeah. Well, I just mean
like
I was thinking of like the Nautilus versus Nautilus that had really no point.
Or they get the random tropical illness for no reason, or the
that was just
trip.
like adventure story,
yeah,
really
yeah,
type
again,
thing.
so they could have easily just done. Well, we need to buy time. Let's just do fun adventure stuff and not. Let's just fuck over these characters in terms of development as much as we can and just undo any goodwill we might have built up entirely. I mean, yes, they did waste their time and they were able to kind of hold the ship, but at what cost?
Yeah,
what cost?
I imagine if you were actually enjoying the series at this point and you hit that stretch, Like
Well,
imagine
imagine if
kids
you had to
watching
watch
that.
it week by week, like the
Yeah, I
way it was
know.
originally being broadcast in
Oh my
Japan.
god,
You
if
have
you're
to wait a
watching
whole
week by
week
week.
for 10 episodes, so like about a month and a half of bullshit, essentially. Like that was horrible. It's like worse than that. What was it? That Haruhi one where it was literally the same episode on repeat over and over again. Like
But they
it must be.
reanimated every time just to fuck with people.
Yeah, it's like imagine it being like that. You wait for next week for a new episode. It's the same goddamn thing, but this is worse because
Because
yes, it's new,
insulting.
but it actually insults and undoes everything. It's like imagine watching, Game of Thrones, and then suddenly for 10 episodes, the whole thing turns into Family Guy. But it's the same characters, but now it's Family Guy. Like, oh no, Lannister's coming home to meet us. Better get oh no, the roast burnt. It's like,
You remember Cold?
imagine if that happened. Like that's what it's like for the series. It's like, okay, we have something building up, big battle scene, the all is lost moment happens, and then suddenly wacky jokes. It's just
Yeah.
and that's what makes it so funny. Actually, is because
it's actually interesting
because it's
too.
such a nosedive. It is like it is like not just like a train wreck, but imagine a bunch of fireworks on a train wreck. That's what it's like.
Yeah, it is so interesting, and just like you just look at this entire anime, you just watch and you're like, the fuck happened with this production? Something. It's like, oh my god, what did you guys do?
God, and well, again, like it's Ano, and considering the behind the scenes nightmare that happened near the end of the first Eva stuff, and kind of to be fair, also what has his attempted remakes of the movies has turned into, it's kind of not surprising now. Like the horrible, inexplicable turn that the new movies have taken, kind of makes sense now, looking at what happened to Nadia. Like it's something is wrong with him where near the end of the marathon he has a mental breakdown and just starts punching himself in the groin while screaming as he tries to run to cross the finish line. That seems to be a problem with him.
Yeah.
Like, I wonder if he is mentally ill.
Well, I think it's well known that he's got some sort of thing going on there. I mean, you can kind of see it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he had that mental breakdown, makes ends the Evangelion the way it does, makes the movie.
To be fair, that thing actually, a lot of the Evangelion stuff is outright less breakdown and more just like that is full out Space Runaway Ideon has like the same sort of stuff happen where their TV series actually ends. Like inexplicably, just ends basically because they run out of money and they're getting canceled. Yeah. And then Tomino manages to get the budget to do a movie, and then the movie ends also in the same way basically that Eva ends with the whole like songs type stuff, or like the whole kind of congratulations type thing.
Okay, because I was thinking about the movie he made after that, which was pretty much almost like a mental breakdown in film form.
Well, Ideon is kind of like that too, in that Ideon literally has every named character ever shown die on screen, including young children, just getting absolutely just eviscerated by laser beams and shit. And it's literally just like God hates you all, like literal, like the mechanized God Deus Ex Machina is not amused.
Oh yeah, one of the ships in Nadia, they named it Deus Ex Machina.
Wah, wah.
Yep. Well, again, like there's all sorts of references to like all these world religions and things, and there's no reason for it.
Ano is huge about it's also the kind of that's trying to tie into the quasi ancient aliens type thing.
Well, again, the world tree thing, like what the hell was that about?
It's like it turns out that's real.
And but the thing is, they spend like 10 minutes on it. And it has nothing. Why are you taking 10 minutes to explain this thing? Like that plate tectonics are a result of the world tree growing, which again flies in the face of its attempted sci-fi aspect. And again, it's getting into magic-ish shit again.
Well, I think that's also that also ties into the whole like, oh, all the religions are actually Atlantis.
Yeah, I guess that's what it is. I mean, again, the
Atlantis
whole thing starts
created
contradicting
humanity.
itself
Atlantis
a lot of times.
God.
It feels like. I
Yeah,
mean, but okay. So one of the good aspects though is they have a couple good female characters in this.
yeah. You have Electra, who is interesting. You have
Grandis.
Grandis, who is the entire gang in the fucking tank, the entire Grandis gang are just
They're
great
great.
characters. They're just
You
really
can't
fun.
make but you can't make them main characters just because of what they are. So
No,
they're but side characters are very important, and their side characters in many works are often the most interesting. It just if only they were paired with something better because they're so good. They're so much fun.
you can really tell why they just took these characters outright just to make the Team Rocket characters in the anime. Because the
Yeah.
Team Rocket characters are literally like the three of them, like
Yeah,
just
Jesse and
scrambled.
James being Grandis and Sanson, because
Well,
like
the thing
Sanson's
is,
fashionable and things like that, and that's where James's thing.
well, yeah, well, that's in kind of their general stylistic stuff, in terms
Yeah.
of we're so cool for a while there. Early on, anyways, they end up getting rid of that when they become a bit more gaggy.
See, they're the ones that made me think the series was going to be something different. Just
Yeah.
because, again, and that's where I'm like, the Grandis gang and the two main characters and the setting was like, okay, this feels like I'm watching Sherlock Hound. You have delightful trio that's kind of like the villains, but they're kind of lovable in a weird way, and then you have two main protagonists that are against them, and it's kind of just an adventure thing, and that's the way that's set up is like that's very much like an entirely different show that ends up happening.
Well, the thing is also that always gets me with that is that they're used still towards the end as like well actualized characters that actually contribute to everything.
Oh yeah, like they ended up oddly becoming a lot more compelling and having a lot more thematically interesting things to say than a lot of the other characters.
Well, they've also got more agency than John and Nadia too. So it's kind of like, why didn't you just try writing these so these are the main characters and like they're more likable, they're more interesting, and they actually matter to the plot? And it's like,
Well,
but
see,
they're
what
minor
I would have
characters.
done is I don't think you can suddenly make them the main characters. Just
Well,
because
yeah.
If you let's say
Well,
you
I meant
had to
if you-
start- let's
I'm
say you
saying if
started
you-
with the first 3 episodes and had to keep that, I would have just instead found a way to make Jean and Nadia have more agency. Like
Sure,
that
sure,
was the
sure.
mistake. That was a big fun. I think that's
Well, what
one
I'm
of the
saying
big
is more
fundamental
like,
mistakes.
okay, if they're going to make these characters, and these are the characters they like, and these are the characters they're going to focus on, why don't you just not have from episode 1 no Nadia, no Jean, and then just like somehow like combine their elements into the more interesting characters?
Yes, they could have done that.
I mean, it's more.
I mean, that's basically
that
like
involves completely
Kaiketsu
rewriting
Zori,
it.
which is a kid's show where it's like a mischief maker is the main character. They're kind of like an anti-hero hero.
Yeah.
Like they could have done that, but that again probably
Well,
would have been
even
much
I mean,
more
even
of
after a while, they stopped being like anti-heroes. Like it just turns out that Sanson and Hansen are just generally just like really
well, they were
great
just
guys.
doing what they needed to do. Like it
'Cause-
was
'cause
just
they
like,
cared
we're
about their
trying to get
mistress.
reward money. We thought this person was wanted. Like that's it.
Yeah, it's like we were just being helpful to our mistress because we have loyalty, which is a good character trait. That's the entire thing, is that they're just good people in general, it turns out. That's
Yeah.
it.
So anyway, I guess this is the conclusion is that if you want to see Proto Team Rocket and find out
Proto-Evangelion.
Proto Evangelion, some other things visually, this is a series to check out for that. I guess also if you want to see a bad example of how to handle varying tone and planning a series effectively. Like this series, it just was not well planned and was not well executed, and it meanders and it shows it.
And just
Have
just
your
how
shit
not to
together before you start. At least have an outline, something.
Yeah. It's just how not to write protagonists, really, is the biggest takeaway I would say from this.
Yes, that's the good lesson. So, I guess to sign off on this, we should tell everybody what we're planning to do next. We're going to still stick on something a bit older. That's actually 20. What is it? I think it's 30 years older. In fact,
Yeah.
well, about. We're going to be doing the original 1960s Speed Racer, which is very interesting both in a production thing as an icon, how much it had to get changed for the American audience, and it's just such an iconic series, and it has been attempted to be remade many times, terribly, but it's something very interesting and actually kind of funny to watch because some of it's ridiculous.
It's so fucking
Some of it is ridiculous and dumb as hell, and I think that will be fun to watch. It's a train wreck, but almost in a fun way rather than a oh god. So if you want to watch along you can watch the entire original series on Hulu for free. It was originally released on DVD, which I do have because I love collecting these old series that are terrible and funny, like G.I. Joe or Speed Racer. But it's hard to get those DVDs now, so they're expensive. But hey, Hulu's there, so you can watch those episodes. It is the dub, I think, which
Which is
honestly,
really what you should be
which is
watching
honestly
anyways.
great because the dub is what gives it's almost like an entirely different show.
Well, yeah, it takes the really cheesy 60s stuff, which is already really cheesy and just bad.
And weird.
And then
It's
it
just
adds
weird.
on the US dub stuff on just to make it even weirder. Because, like, the original Japanese always for these shows is always just, like, super shrill, like, just, ugh.
Well,
And then
it's like the recording technology back in old movies makes all men and all women and all children sound the same. It's like
so
that.
they all sound like...
Yeah, pretty much. And the other thing too is this was before they were changing the localization enough to match the mouth movement. So like, yeah, so when you localize anime or anything else, you're not doing a direct translation. This, on the other hand, was still trying to deliver
a
the
direct
same
translation
amount
while
of
still sticking
information.
all the words into the mouth that is
Yeah,
possible.
because like Japanese, like as much as people like to make fun of in bad parodies, is actually a very compact language. You can say a lot with just a couple words because they don't have a lot of extra prepositions and connecting words. So in order to deliver the same amount of detailed information, it's more mouth movements for English. And they didn't realize that, oh no, we have to summarize things when we translate. So the American version of Speed Racer, they all talk a mile a minute, and that's a part of the style. Dexter's Lab has done like a parody of it that's amazing. It's such an iconic show. So I also think it'll be fun to watch. So hopefully also check us both on Twitter. We will probably announce a screening of some episodes so you guys can hear us watching these episodes.
I doubt it's going to be like a quote unquote screening so much as just like, hey, we're going to watch
sampling.
a couple
We're
episodes
going to do
here and
some.
there.
We're going to do sampling, of course, because the series is quite long. It is, I think, approximately 50 some odd episodes, if I recall correctly.
52 apparently.
Yeah, it's 52 episodes. So we're not going to watch all of them. But
No.
But to be fair, the series really doesn't change all that much. So we hope that you guys will check that out, or on your own, definitely watch some episodes of Speed Racer. We're hoping to kind of give you guys a heads up of what we're going to cover ahead of time, so you guys can watch things before you watch this. Listen to this. Except unless it's a movie that's just coming out, which then we'll record as soon as we can.
Yeah.
So that's it. Your homework is Speed Racer, original 1960s, not the remake where he's a high school student going to racing school, not the 80s remake where he's fighting furry cyborgs with his brother, and not the movie with the Wachowski brothers and sister, not... God, I'm trying to remember the other remakes. What other remakes are there? There's a lot.
Yeah.
So, the original.
Yeah.
Hulu.
So
Watch
go
it.
Speed Racer. Go Speed Racer. Go Speed Racer. Go.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. Again, you can find me at R.Y. Magnuson with 2 S's.
And you can find me at S.A. Zorak.
Feel free to send us comments, questions, suggestions of things to check out and maybe do episodes on in the future.
Death threats, pictures of frogs, whatever.
Yeah, or just gifs of parts of the things we talk about that you thought were really funny sequences. I love getting the Ruby ones. Those were magical. So we're gonna eventually have to cover the next season of that when that comes out. Because we hate you all.
Because we hate ourselves.
We hate each other.
Oh God, I hate so much.
All right. Well, signing off.
See ya.